How many of you guys on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, is that even still a thing, didn't see a Royal Oak, Overseas, Aquanaut, or Nautilus today? I'm pretty sure all of you guys saw at least one today. So to spice up your day, because that's obviously the purpose of YouTube, I have a watch here that's similar in quality and price that you probably didn't see today. The Tondagraph GT and the more affordable time-only version, the Tonda GT by independent brand Parmigiani Fleurier. I knew of this brand before, but I never bothered to look much into them because they primarily focus on precious metal dress watches, which isn't really my style. That was until these two watches debuted last year, the Tonda GT and the Tondagraph GT, which are the brand's new sportier offerings. But first, who is Parmigiani Fleurier? They are an independent watch brand officially founded by master watchmaker Miguel Parmigiani in 1996, but goes as far as 1976 when he was specializing in restoration work. Since then, many companies have been added to their firm to produce in-house movements, dials, cases, bracelets, screws, pushers, essentially 100% Swiss-made in-house. So they have incredible access to some of the finest watchmaking resources like Les Artisans Boutiers, who are case makers, and Vachier manufacturer who produce movements for brands like Richard Mille. So no shortage in ability to produce highly finished horology pieces with complications like minute repeaters and tourbillons. Their most notable piece being the Bugatti 370, which won the Watch of the Year award in 2006, which basically showed what independent watchmaking was capable of, a basic flex at the time. Now again, the brand is primarily known for their precious metal dress watches, stainless steel being kind of rare to find actually, but they decided to make sports offerings because that's what the masses are into now. First, let's take a look at the Tonda GT, which is my preference of the two. I love time-only pieces because they offer everything I need, time and date only, yet filled with tons of details despite being quite monotone. The majority of this dial is finished with a triangular guilloche pattern, and the outer circumference has a radially stepped ring that insets the applied markers. Radial finishing is also found on the 6 o'clock subdial, which shows the second hand in a unique way. There are two hands, one to read 0 to 30 and the other 30 to 60. Initially, I thought these seconds might be a bit difficult to read due to this layout, but I quickly got used to it. And let's face it, most of us only use the second hand to tell whether or not a watch is running. Anyways, what isn't difficult to read is the date because, well, it's huge. It's actually a big date that operates via two wheels. What's powering all of this is the in-house caliber PF044 that's also layered with various types of finishing, Geneva stripes, perlage, and mirror polish bevels. I've been wearing this watch almost exclusively for 2 weeks now, and it's been super comfortable and a lot of fun. It does have an integrated bracelet despite how it looks at the lugs. You can't put on a standard strap because the fold and links are fixed to the case. And whether you opt for the rubber or bracelet, which are interchangeable, both are very comfortable and the fit is great because the lugs curve substantially. This makes 42mm diameter feel true to its size opposed to wearing much larger. Overall, a very simple, good looking watch that has just enough character to prevent it from being stale by any means. And although marketed as a sports watch, I can still feel and see a bit of Parmigiani's dress identity within the design of this piece. But for a more sporty and complicated version, we have the Tondagraph GT. According to PF, this watch is all about practicality, so they put in a chronograph and annual calendar, which they find are the most useful complications. It's definitely a strange yet useful set of complications that we don't see paired together that often. The design and finishing is basically the same as the time-only version, except we have those added complications on the dial. We have the same big date at 12, sub-seconds at 3 that also displays the month, chronograph minute subdial at 9, and hour subdial at 6. On the back, you can see the caliber PF043, which is an in-house movement as you would expect, and the finishing is also super nice like the PF044 time-only caliber. This watch vaguely reminds me of the older generation Overseas, which kind of makes sense because PF worked with the guy who was also involved in designing that Overseas as well. But what's interesting about this Tondagraph GT is that it's basically a direct competitor to the Royal Oak, Aquanaut, and Overseas based on its price point. The price is 19,500 CHF, which is around 21.5k USD, which is also where the other watches roughly sit around. But keep in mind, those other watches are time and date only. The Tondagraph GT has time, big date, annual calendar, and chronograph. Essentially, for roughly around the same amount of money, you get an additional chronograph and annual calendar complication from a high-end independent brand. But regardless of how well these watches are made or what complications are offered, we can't deny the biggest factor that AP, VC, and Patek have over PF: brand recognition. You are paying for that name, and I think it's complete BS for someone to say that they don't care at all about it. We all have a certain degree of sheep mentality whether we admit it or not. A lot of people originally didn't even like those hype watches, but suddenly, mysteriously, magically realized that they do like those watches after the hype grew, coincidentally. The PF are nowhere as near as popular, so you can get them at retail, maybe even less, who knows. This is similar to when I got my overseas. No one really cared about it or wanted it, so I got mine relatively easily, quickly, and with a discount as well, brand new. The purpose of this video is not to persuade someone who wants a hype watch to get something else just because it's available. You're unlikely to be satisfied unless you get the watch that you truly want. But what I do want to stress is that there are other options, not to be mistaken for alternatives, that more people should just be aware of. Not necessarily to buy, but just know. I constantly get emails from people like, hey dude, I have 20k, 30k saved up, but I can't buy anything because AP, Patek, and VC won't sell me anything. And I also don't want to buy any of their cheaper watches. And my response is usually along the lines of, I don't know, have you considered not buying a hype watch and looked somewhere else? There's so many options out there of similar quality. Anyways, to see someone with this Tonda GT or Tondagraph GT says a lot about that person. Perhaps he or she already owns the hype watches and decided to branch out further into independence. Or he or she might be fed up with the current state of the market and decided to spend their money on brands that actually have things available and will sell it to them. I have friends on both ends of that spectrum, and I'm curious to see where I end up in a couple of years, if this whole hype thing doesn't die by then. These two watches, as well made as they are, just aren't my style, which is completely subjective and not a knock against their quality by any means. Very much like how I don't like the Nautilus because of its aesthetics. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you haven't already. Do follow me on Instagram at loom_shot, and I will see you guys in the next video. Later.